Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wilde, and Josh is joining us for once. Just kidding. He's been pretty steady in his appearances, and we're grateful for that because everyone loves when Josh and I disagree. And we're gonna not let you down, and we're gonna disagree plenty today because we're talking about Spider-Man. What is the movie called? No Way Home. Yeah.
Oh, No Way Home.
No Way Home. And joining us also from Australia right now is Steve Jubber from the G.i.Joburg podcast / YouTube channel. Amazing stuff, fantastic guy, and he has a great perspective on movies. I've always loved listening to him chime in and talk about things on his channel. And even though it's not his specialty, but he always has some very intelligent and I'm gonna say fair things to say whenever you talk about things, Steve. So I was glad to have you join us to maybe, as you said, maybe mediate between Josh and I.
Yeah, I'm here to keep you ladies civil. yeah, that's my function.
That's great. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna kind of dive in with a couple of just general impressions about the movie, spoiler free for the first little bit, give our recommendation, our final judgment for it. And I don't know how that's gonna go. And then we're gonna dive into a top 7
Just gonna
list.
give our rating, and that's it. That's pretty much all you can do.
Yeah, just let you decide yourself when you go see the movie if you slapped your forehead when you walked out, or if you were just standing there with your jaw dropped. Of course, you could stand there with your jaw dropped, staring at the credits sequence, and that could either be an approval or disapproval of the film. But we're going to start, then we're going to go into my top 7 reasons why this movie was not as awesome as everyone is saying it is, which gives you a little clue as to my general impression.
Okay.
I'll just say...
Here we go.
I'll just
Here we
say...
go.
The movie is fine, but everyone is going crazy saying this is like the greatest MCU movie and this is like the best Spider-Man film of all time and this was like exactly what we wanted. They're making it sound like this was the accomplishment that I gave to Avengers, the first one, being like just such a masterpiece in being the first movie to tie in so many characters and give a lot of fan service and treat it very lovingly and make it still a very entertaining film that worked as a narrative with individual story arcs, character interactions for the first time. You were like excited to see it, and it worked really well. And then they did bigger and better movies all the way up to Endgame, which was just a big, a marvel, pun intended, of that accomplishment. Incredible to give everyone the right screen time, give them their little parts in the story that it made sense and it worked, and it was you just put out your what do they call it? Your suspension of disbelief. You don't put that out, you put that in, and then you come out entertained and enjoyed, or with enjoyment of a satisfying story with great characters that you felt this fulfillment. And that didn't happen here, and everyone's acting like it did. So I have my list of reasons I don't like. I didn't feel it added up. We'll just say that. But entertaining, and it's fine. It was fun. It was fun to watch, but it felt to me completely like a video game. I put on Facebook the Spider-Man game, Friend or Foe. I think that's what it was called back on the Xbox 360, not even Xbox One. Cheesy CGI interactions of the characters from the Sam Raimi movies. Those cutscenes, that kind of dialogue is exactly how this entire movie felt. I was very disappointed because I love the first 2 Tom Holland movies. That's all I'm going to say for now. I was very unimpressed for what it could have been. I felt the dialogue and everything was really cheesy. The interactions were forced. The story was really complicated, and it was like a simple story, but a very complicated story at the same time, which frustrated me. But I wasn't overly impressed.
So you're upset that the multiverse was complicated?
No. See, Into the Spider-Verse did the multiverse, and it made complete sense, and it was fun. It was entertaining. It was intriguing. You had your emotions that were there, that they were set up and they paid off really well. This one did not.
You don't think that this movie was emotional?
No. There was one scene. We'll talk, not without spoiling. There's one scene that I was emotional for. That's it.
That is surprising. It's also
I cry at everything.
But I'll tell you what. Yeah, I mean, you cry at the Alf Christmas movie. So I mean, like, you know, Alf Christmas special.
Alf Christmas special, the most wonderful Christmas special.
Wells up Tim in tears. So even talking about it. So okay, here's the thing that does not surprise me, and what does not surprise me is that a movie that is wildly heralded as a great movie, Tim doesn't think is great.
Amazing.
Like, it's almost like, okay, because I knew Tim didn't like it because I saw it late. So I was supposed to see it on Christmas, and then I got sick, so I couldn't. So I just saw it Monday, I think, is when I saw it. So I already knew Tim was just completely disappointed with it. And so
I'll say completely disappointed.
Well, that's too much. But I knew you were disappointed. I knew
I was more frustrated with the general population on how they felt about it. I was more annoyed than.
Well, Tim, if you're going to use that as your yardstick for engagement with a film, like, yeah, no. So I don't think public opinion is always going to be your best judge.
Yeah,
because the public opinion liked The Rise of Skywalker, so whatever.
Well, here we go. That was the first movie. Wait, no, it was The Last Jedi was the one that we did our first one.
And we don't need to get into that, but yeah.
Anyway, but as I sat and watched this movie, as the last credits rolled, I was just like, Tim, what are you talking about? That movie was great. You know, like I sat there and I just go. Now, again, I am one who I personally think that a lot of how you enjoy a movie depends on your expectations going in. So if you are
for crying out loud, that is not true.
Stop. Let me finish. So what I'm saying is I think that you generally had higher expectations for what it would be. You, in your assessment, tempered my expectations a bit. Although, as soon as I heard what you said, I'm like, well, then the movie's probably gonna be amazing, right? And so
Tim didn't like it. I'm gonna love it.
As soon as I heard Tim getting like, I was disappointed. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this movie's gonna be Oscar worthy, you know. And but no, like it was for me. Look, and again, I'm not like super into the Marvel universe as far as comic book goes, right? I'm not somebody who's like super detail oriented into these movies. I loved them. I loved Endgame. I think it was a cinematic masterpiece. I think Endgame was like this generation's Jurassic Park, right? Like it was this generation's crowning achievement in cinema as of right now. Being able to do a 19 movie story arc that ends in this just gigantic conglomerate of all these movies was really something that had never been done before and was like really impressive, right? That being said, other than Into the Spider-Verse, which was a cartoon, this was the first time that there was a multiverse.
You say that very condescendingly, like it's not real art or anything.
No, I'm not saying it's not real art, but I'm just saying it's a lot easier to do with a cartoon because you can make the characters engage and you can do all these things. You know, you got Tobey Maguire, who's what, like 15 years older than he was when he was playing Spider-Man, you know, and then you have
might have to put that in the spoilers box.
Yeah, right. Okay, does anybody not know at this point that all the Spider-Mans show up? I mean, you know, and so, but anyway, I mean, we are releasing this like 2 weeks later. Okay, so I mean, you know, if anyone hasn't seen it, I mean,
and I won't edit it for another 6 months, so we're
I know, right? So anyway, my point is that like I watched it and I thought it was very emotional. I thought it was really great. I thought it was all the characters that came out. I felt very much like their characters were explained quite a bit, particularly the villains. I thought that the way that the villains were portrayed, I don't usually like, and we'll get into that in the spoiler part of it, but like there were some things I normally don't like that they do with villains in movies that they did with these villains that I actually was okay with, which I'm surprised about. And yeah, like who wouldn't like that? Like, I mean, I don't know. It seemed like no matter which Spider-Man movies you liked, I feel like you would have gotten what you wanted out of the characters, seeing them in those times in their lives. So Tim's drunk. That's what I'm saying.
Tim's wrong. Well, before we go to Steve, I just want to say that the part it is true. I did have high expectations because the first two were done so well. And when we did our review of Far From Home, I think it was me and the LeBarons who joined us for that episode, and we did the top 7 lists of things that I loved about the movie, and it was emotional beats. And when we did Endgame, we did the top 7 things that made me cry in Endgame, and I had a full list of 20 as I was writing them down to choose from, and they were legitimate tear moments. I wasn't just like making up stuff to make a fun list. I was in tears like most of that movie because it was so emotional.
Ugly cry.
Yeah, so I took a picture of me in the car.
Oh, Tony!
Proudly. But I post on Facebook like a picture of me with my actual tears in the car, processing it on the way home,
Tim was actually processing it. Like
I was. There was so much
in
that happened in that movie. This one, nothing. Anyway, but that's why, because I was very emotionally connected and cared so much about these characters and what was pulled off in the last movie, and this one I felt was just nothing. It was just phoned in. I felt like everything about it. It was just lazy. The writing was not smart.
Maybe you're just dead inside, Tim.
Yeah, I'm dead inside. Steve, what'd you think, bud? First of all, give us a little background. I know how you feel about some movies, but just Spider-Man, just in general, real quick, and then what did you feel about this one?
Well, I think I come down squarely in the middle of you gents because I've always felt a little lukewarm on the MCU portrayal of Spider-Man. It did some things very nicely, getting this very young-looking, fresh-faced lead. He seemed to characterize that gawky, nerdy, amazed Spider-Man. Like, wow, why? You're an Avenger? We're gonna be an Avenger now? Like, that sense was so beautiful. The school setting also, it worked so nicely in ways that had previously kind of not, having a guy in his late 20s running around the schoolyard, no matter how hard you try, is always going to be a bit of a stretch. That said, I've always been lukewarm on them for reasons I find difficult to explain. Maybe it's got to do with the fact that this Peter Parker always had a connection to Stark Tech and had everything at his disposal. What is so essential to Peter's character is to be this kid who needs to work shitty dead-end jobs to, help his aunt, to put himself through school, get sick, is late for his rent, that kind of thing. Like, it seems like Tom Holland's Spider-Man has always had his world on a silver platter.
We never saw that part, yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, I'm getting off the beaten track. So I went in with very moderated expectations. Moderated even more so by the fact that the trailers for this film gave away far too much. A lot of the impact that we could have enjoyed in this movie was robbed of us by whoever cut the trailer. And I know they got to build up an excitement for this film, but really,
everyone was going to see it anyway.
If I went in knowing absolutely nothing, I would have. I'm going to tip my hand a little bit, Tim, and say that this movie is worth the price of admission a couple of times over. But it would have been even more so had those reveals not been spliced into the trailer. So.
Agreed.
I'm really in the middle. It's a big, dumb holiday movie. And that's all it had to be. Because it's going to put the meat in the seats, baby. And it has. I don't know what the box office totals are, but...
Over $1 billion, I just saw. I saw it today. It finally hit
All right. Congratulations. It did exactly what it was designed to do.
Let me ask you.
The writer's room in the Marvel universe, they don't make these decisions lightly. I think if they were gonna, everything that is in this film and the way it is presented was done for a purpose, and that purpose is to make this the most widely marketable Spider-Man movie ever, and perhaps the most widely marketable Marvel movie ever, or superhero movie ever. So it's a dumb movie, but made by smart people.
Yeah, I agree.
So quick question for you, Steve. So like the trailer, I was just thinking about this as you were talking, and it kind of was interesting to me. Do you think it would have been better for them to put in the trailer just Doctor Strange and Spider-Man talking about the concept of multiverse, just to kind of get the juices flowing, like, ooh, we might see some things, rather than showing the reveals? Or would you have preferred them to just not say anything about multiverse at all and then just find out when you walk into the theater? Or have you even thought about it? Maybe you haven't even thought about it.
I think the strongest misdirect is the one that they went with, but then they gave away too much of the good stuff thereafter. What I mean by that is start with the crisis at hand, which is Spider-Man's identity is in the open.
Yeah.
What is the fallout of that? And in the film proper, that is actually stitched up really quickly. That occupies not even, I suppose, half an hour of screen time, and you're already like that crisis is resolved. So that by just leaning into that with the trailer, you would have, and perhaps you'd need some kind of fight at the end, maybe making it seem like Doctor Strange is the big bad, that he's somehow gone to the bad, and Spidey needs to, like, if you give away that fight, you're honestly just going to disillusion. Like, I'm just going to be more confused about what this film is about. Is it building towards multiverse of madness? Maybe Spider-Man is the catalyst for that. So I think by revealing Doc Ock in the trailer, the Goblin bombs,
Yeah.
these moments, I wanted to just see that fresh. And then it's now made me very wary of watching trailers ever. And listening to podcasts and shows on YouTube about trailer breakdowns. I just want to go in with nothing spoiled. But trailers need to do their job. Like, they need to draw people in. So you can't blame them, really.
But they just need to establish the tone and a very vague concept of what the story is. That's it. You don't need to hammer in any other details besides that. And I stopped watching trailers for most things. If there's a movie I know I'm going to watch, I don't watch anything, especially Star Wars. I haven't watched a single Star Wars trailer since Attack of the Clones, actually, honestly. I jumped out of theaters if a trailer was coming on, even on dates, and I had to tell the girl ahead of time, if a Star Wars trailer comes on, I'm out the door. And I had stories about that. But this one, I didn't watch the trailers for it. I knew from the little commercials and the posters that Doc Ock was in it, and I figured, there's bringing people back. After I saw the movie, before I did my wild thoughts on my personal channel, I had to be like, well, what can I talk about based on the trailer? And I watched the trailer and I was floored that everything was in there. Almost everything except for the big thing that now, after opening weekend, Marvel is just shooting all over the place, the big reveal, that there's no excitement going into it. And I agree with you, Steve. If I had gone in knowing absolutely nothing, I heard the rumors about what was going to be, or what or who was going to be in it, and it was just all there, that I wasn't surprised when it happened. If I didn't know anything, it would have been a very different story. But
that said, though, there were those get up and cheer in your seat kind of moments anyway.
Yeah.
There was enough held back that when you got that moment, you were like, yes, excellent.
That's what I was gonna say, was that even though everybody pretty much knew what was coming, I mean, anybody who watched the first trailer probably got a sense of what was happening in this movie. And yet when it happened, and I like I said, I saw it, let's see, so it came out the Thursday before Christmas, so a week before. Christmas was on Saturday, so almost, a week and a half, almost 2 weeks later, the crowd, the theater was full, and the crowd still cheered 2 weeks later. You know what I mean? They knew it was happening. You know what I mean?
Probably some repeat business as well.
Yeah, but when it happened, everybody popped. You know what I mean? And so that, I agree with you. I really wish, because I see, other than Eternals, for some reason I didn't see that, but I think I've seen every Marvel movie other than Eternals in the theater, and I was not gonna miss Spider-Man. You know what I mean? And so I agree that they shouldn't have so blatantly revealed
through it all.
I mean, they could have done a couple of things to kind of hint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to just basically show Doc Ock in the first trailer, You know, like I don't know.
If you're gonna show
but then
anything
again,
like that, wait for the later trailer. Sometimes and then sometimes I'll watch the first trailer, but not like the third trailer that comes out, because that's when they really start spilling it.
Well, and I think also you got to also remember we're in the post-COVID era, right? It's harder to get people to the theaters, so it's very possible that they threw that stuff out there to try to get people to the theater, and it worked. I mean, it's the biggest post-COVID movie, isn't it? Is it just post-COVID or
for
like
sure, yeah?
or is it even just Marvel in general? It's like one of the highest grossing ones.
It's up there. It has certainly demonstrated that COVID be damned, a movie with that kind of pull will get people to come to the theaters.
Yeah, I don't know what was worse, Christmas or Spider-Man for COVID spread. Like, because I mean, I was looking on Christmas Day in to take my kids, and I couldn't find, like, it was like 3 or 4 days before Christmas, and I couldn't find a theater that had enough seats. I had to split us up to get enough seats to go and see it. So, I mean, that was, that only happens usually maybe opening weekend for movies. And so, yeah.
Well, let's dive into our final judgments. I'll hold my cards for just a second there. But Josh, you saw it in the theater a week and a half late. Family was there, still big crowd, all that energy and enthusiasm for what probably still felt like opening weekend. What do you rate it? Celestial? Is this a gotta see it in the theater, or just hold off till it comes out?
Oh, absolutely, you got to see it in the theater. I mean, if it's a okay, here's the thing I'm kind of running into right now. Is there really any? I mean, I just went and saw a friend who's got an 85-inch TV. Like, does anyone really have to go see a movie in the theater anymore? I mean, like, I love the theater. If there's a movie that you have to see in the theater, I would think that Spider-Man is the one. I mean, it's just, it was that good. So
okay, Steve.
I think I'm going to go one further and say this is a movie not worth seeing anywhere but a theater.
So once it comes out, you're done. Hear
me out. It's an experience that needs to be experienced as a group experience, as a communal experience, and Lord knows we need that in our human experience nowadays. It was so wonderful to be in a theater of people, total strangers, but at the moments where hoops were expected, hoops of joy were erupting. So it's definitely going to be diminishing returns if you're in your own home theater environment, and certainly the gaping plot holes and various like problems that this film had, these egregious issues that we're going to get into, will start just widening even further as time passes. I don't know if this is going to be a film that ages well, because it leans so heavily into big reveals. Now that the big reveals are all revealed, is this a good film? Tim's about to tell you, not so much.
I agree with you, especially if they start making more movies with cast members from this movie to build on that nostalgia. I think those movies are probably going to age better than this initial kickoff of those reveals and turns. I know exactly what you're saying, though. I will never sit and watch Endgame again. I loved it. I saw it 3 times in the opening weekend, once by myself, the opening day. Very grateful for that experience because it was very emotional and heavy. The room was just sunk because of the heat, or not the heat, but the weight of the emotions and the everyone's what's going to happen and the weight of that movie. And I saw it again with my kids because they wanted to see it. I wanted to let them see it opening weekend before everything got spoiled at school. Let them enjoy that, and I think I saw it one more time before we did our review. I'll never sit and watch it again because I don't need to. It's not a entertaining movie to sit through. It's all the emotional punches and everything were there. I was able to feel that the end cap of the 21 movies or whatever at the time, and that's all I needed. I may watch scenes. I think I would buy it. I haven't bought many of those because they're all on Disney Plus. But I'll never sit and watch that again. And this one, same thing. I don't think I'd.
Tim, I'm going to challenge you on that because
here we go.
Because Endgame, those interactions, those final interactions in a lot of cases amongst characters, are so poignant.
I agree. They're really good.
That's worth rewatching them for. It's like the whole debacle of the MCU built to this point.
Yes.
And now you're finally getting Tony, Steve, and Thor, the original three, like doing their thing. You've got that being tied off, the snap, everything. Just like the scene where Cap and Natasha and who else was there? I'm leaving someone else. I think Barton was there. Anyways, no, he was doing his Ronin shit. When they were in the cabin approaching Tony about it's Scott Lang, Ant-Man. And they're just having that conversation about like, this is possible. Like, you just need to do the science bit.
Right.
So good.
I agree. It's really good. It's amazing. It's just
skip all the action. Just watch character.
The most memorable stuff in there was the stuff that wasn't the action sequences. It was all the character moments. And I agree. I'm saying it's worth watching. And I know a lot of people that love it. It's just I won't be able to sit myself and put myself in that frame of mind to be able to go through it again, because I don't want to go through all that weight. I don't need to. For entertainment.
But you think with Spider-Man you don't want to watch it again because it's just not
disappointed.
Good. Okay. Yeah. All right. Got it.
So you're not. You don't think they need to see it in the theater.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I think this was a theater movie. I do.
So it's Celestial.
I'm giving it a Celestial rating because it's fun, and I think because of how bad the dialogue was, honestly, and the like we were say, like plot holes and things like that, whatever. The entertainment part of it is all the spectacle, the special effects, the action scene, because there's so many characters going or in a lot of the sets in the scenes at the same time, in long camera or takes of a moving, rolling around a tower or whatever, with like multiple characters coming in and out of frame, like to capture all that stuff effectively and to enjoy it, to feel like you're involved, like that you're there. In the theater is gonna be the best way to see that. And I have a huge 88-inch screen TV, and I enjoy my spectacles on there. But this is, and also the crowd. I remember the moments that the crowd cheered, were the moments I was like, oh, here we go, here we go, and then they still cheered. I was like, oh, whatever. It's fun. It's
pleasing you, man.
No, Far From Home pleased me. But this, I think for the vibe, for the special effects, the cinematography, was beautiful film, well shot, and a lot of interesting takes on how they compose certain characters on frame together that we'll talk about. Interesting and very well done, I think, for the most part. See it in the theater. It's really good. Enjoy it, and I think this is going to be a crowd pleaser for a while. I think theaters are going to be packed with this for and like you said, Steve, with people on multiple takes. So I think people are going to want to see it over and over because they're just enjoying the nostalgia. That's the big thing. That's like really the lifeblood of this movie, is the nostalgia. I honestly think that's the biggest thing it has going for it. And I think everyone has nostalgia goggles on. That's why they love it so much. This is the greatest Spider-Man movie ever because it reminds me of other movies that I enjoyed years ago. I think that's what's happening. But that's it. Celestial rating. Go see it in the theater. We're going to get into a few spoils. I'm going to try and keep this a little tighter. I had a huge list. After I left the theater, I watched it with my boys. We were on our way home, and between leaving the theater, picking up pizza, and getting back to my apartment, I had gone off on all the things that frustrated me about the story, about the characters, about what was going on, and why it was dumb. Like you said, Steve, was a smart, dumb, or well done. Would you say a smart, dumb movie?
Yeah, a dumb movie made by smart people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was dumb. Okay, let's not beat around the bush. And I went off. My kids were like, "I wish I'd have recorded that. That would have been like YouTube gold." But just keep it to some basic stuff. I just put it down to a top 7 list because that's our format. Cut out a bunch of the little nitpicky stuff. But you already said one, Steve. The opening scene. The big thing that bugged me was that they instantly drop the big moment that ended the last movie when his identity was revealed. It showed J. Jonah Jameson. He was swinging around with Zendaya, dropped her off in Times Square and everything. He's looking around. Times Square, yeah. And then they drop the, oh, it's Peter Parker, and it was like, oh my gosh, there's Mysterio's final stab from Hell's, whatever that phrase is, from Star Trek, from Hell's mouth, I stab at thee, whatever. That was
I think it might be from Shakespeare, but yeah, sure, Star Trek. Go for it.
Wrath of Khan, we know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that big moment, and it was just undercut because within the first like 5-10 minutes, it's all wrapped up. Like there's no consequences, nothing happens. It reminded me of Thor 2, which no one remembers Thor 2, and I didn't care about Thor 2, but the big thing at the end when Odin was killed by Loki and he assassinated him and like took and resumed his role, I was like, holy crap, that's a big setup for what's going to happen in the next movie. And the next movie, Thor like comes home, he sees them doing the little puppet show or whatever, and like instantly foils it, and everything's like, oh, it's Loki. And it's like, well, that completely took out all the emotion and the weight of what was happening. Like, that was a huge setup that didn't go anywhere because they're just like, yeah, we don't know what to do with that. So they dropped it. This was the same thing. His identity being revealed was a huge deal. It even got him to drop the F-bomb, which was hilarious. But then, like, he swings around with Zendaya, which is stuff they filmed from the first or the other movie. And then he lands on a bridge, goes under the tunnels. They do this goofy stuff for him to get her home. Like, it'd be that hard for him to get her home. To fall and land next to Flash or whatever,
but Tim, there is no way home. So,
and then he gets there. The helicopters are like within like 2 feet of each other, flying around her apartment. He sneaks in. I'm like, everyone's watching you. How is he gonna get all the way home and get in there? And he's like zipping down all the curtains and everything, having this weird
comedy, baby. That's your reason. It's drawing in the audience. It's playing.
You can thank Guardians of the Galaxy for turning all of these movies into action comedies.
No. Well, Homecoming was very funny. Far From Home was it had some really funny moments, but they were good character earned moments that felt real. This felt like gimmicky, stupid, slapsticky stuff. And all that stuff with Zendaya swinging back was like nothing. And then they get arrested. The FBI come in, and then they like take him and they interrogate him. They talk about him, them all being accomplices and everything. And then like they just send him right back to school the next day. Like there's nothing. There's no ramifications. Nothing happened. Like, and he goes to school and the kids are filming him go in. They just go up on the roof where they're trying to kiss, and the kid in the chair is always in the way. Like all this stuff. I was like, what is going on? Like I didn't understand what the follow-up was with the FBI. They were being very threatening and very serious about it, but like, oh no, you're fine. Just go hang out in your apartment and work on your chemistry set so you can save the day later on. It made no sense, and it was tied up very quickly, like nothing. They didn't even say what happened. They didn't even write an ending to the investigation. It was just suddenly we're done talking about the FBI interacting with them.
Because they got a very good lawyer.
Yeah, okay, and just for that. And I love Daredevil. I love it, but like, what did he's so good that he just had to wink at the camera and it ended the case? Like, I don't understand what was the deal. Can you justify that, Josh? You're a lawyer. Can you follow up with that?
I didn't see anything about what he actually did. I mean,
nothing happened.
Other than catch a brick. No, but I was excited for that when I saw him. I was not excited.
It was cool.
So that was kind of fun. But no, other than, I don't have a really good answer for that because it didn't make a lot of sense. But I think to your point too is that you said they resolved that stuff in like 10 minutes. One of the concerns, if I was going to have a concern with this movie, was that there were so many characters in it that I felt like there wasn't a ton of time for each of the characters to really be developed. Like they did a good job with what they could with the villains, right? Like that was the thing I liked. I typically, now that we're in the spoiler version, I typically don't like it when movies take previous villains and try to create them to not be so villainous, or like have some sort of a reason to be villainous. Like there's something that happened to them in their childhood that turned them into this, or there was some rich white 1%er that destroyed their family or something like that. Like I always hate that. But for some reason, this one, And maybe it was because it was Peter trying to save them, you know, showing the goodness of Spider-Man within it. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what it was, but I felt like it worked for
It's
me.
because it was all cartoony and goofy.
Yeah, you're cartoony and goofy. So no, the thing is though, is but yeah, because there were so many characters, like I was surprised we're like in the first 10 minutes or like whatever, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, when they started revealing all these characters, like he caught all of them and they were behind Doctor Strange's thing.
Thank you.
And then like,
yes.
Yeah. And then they're all sitting there and they're like, they're all caught. And then, you know, I mean, they did a fine job with what they were doing, but it just was like, that's it. No fights for any of them. He just zapped them with Doctor Strange's little thing, and they're all in their little cages, and they're done. You know.
I'll let you keep going, but that's my number 6. Is cheap introductions. All the characters were just conveniently, they just appeared where they needed to be for Spider-Man to catch them. Why did Sandman appear next to Electro and just Electro can go like faster than light or whatever. He's like just zipping around on these power cords in a forest, and he just is hanging out in one spot, and Sandman happens to be just sitting there on the ground in the dirt next to where Spider-Man apprehends him. Well, that made no sense. And there you can have little conveniences, but that was dumb. And why was Hobgoblin popping out right next to where the fight was with Doc Ock? And if you're going to have all these big villains out there, Spider-Man's already wanted by the FBI, theoretically, according to the last movie. And then you have 2 Peter Parkers running around the city at the same time, completely undetected, which is fine as Spider-Man. He's stealthy and everything. But like you have these villains that all appear where they need to be for Tom Holland to go capture them quickly, to put them in jail so you have this terrible cutscene dialogue, and then go right on to the stuff with what's his name, Doctor Strange. It was lazy is the word.
At least Tobey Maguire was in his civilian clothes. I mean, if you're looking for Spider-Man, don't dress like Spider-Man. You know, take your mask off. Hey, you don't look anything like Tom Holland, so really.
Because one, you're a 50-year-old man, and even if you're in your movie, you'd still be a 40-year-old man.
Yeah, so Garfield stuffed up big time by like staying in his kit. Like, come on, dude. Everyone's looking for you.
Yeah. But yeah, cheap introductions. It was bothering me. Like watching, I was like, why is he there? Why did Doc Ock just appear? The fight was just to recreate a fight similar to what was in Spider-Man 2. But you're right, Josh, and that was the other thing. That's actually my number 5. I put, who are these characters? These are not the same characters as they were in their movies. And I'm confused by the timeline of when they were pulled in, because if you take Doc Ock, he's the big one on the poster and in the first trailer and everything. Like, I don't want to get too, break down his character completely, but in his movie, he snapped when the chip fried in the solar pulse or whatever. It fried the chip that kept him in control of the arms, and then he was taken over, and all it was like get money, rob banks and stuff in order to get the energy source that Osborn had. That's all it was. He was just like really just standard comic booky crook. And then once Peter got involved and they had their first encounter, and then Harry told him that he was the key to get more of the stuff, it just turned to, I hate Spider-Man. But that's all it was. Spider-Man was just an obstacle. He took it very personal by the time it got to the end of his arc, where he cared about Peter and the thing was fried and he was like cured. In his story, he already ends up cured. Oh my goodness. Hey Google, stop. That was embarrassing. What the heck? Stop.
This is going great. Professionalism.
Yeah, I don't know why I have an alarm going off at 2 a.m. anyway.
So
anyway, you see what I'm saying? But like by the time Doc Ock comes in here, he's just goofy, comic booky. I'm Doc Ock, ready to fight Peter Parker. He didn't feel like the same character. He didn't have a vendetta for the second half of his movie, or I'm just cheesy bank robbery in the first half. He said Peter. He knew who Peter was. So the identity was revealed at the end of the movie when it was very personal. He didn't feel villainous, like you said, Josh. And Hobgoblin, same thing. He was just, I'm Hobgoblin. Ah! Like, he had no motivations. He didn't, like, Hobgoblin was a psycho crazy guy in his movie. I didn't feel like he was that at all in this one. He just turned into diabolical. They had to have a twist to have a main villain. Electro was nothing.
I'd like to venture on a possible explanation. It's the fact that like the Holland MCU Spider-Man movies have always had a bit of a light touch, even when it comes to villainy, and even relative to other MCU films, Spider-Man has kind of been played in a more light, comic booky, goofy way. And so these characters being pulled from other film franchises have to kind of be massaged a bit to fit the tone of the film that they're coming into.
Well,
I know
would
this is a
argue
very
that-
meta kind of explanation, but that might go some ways to explaining why, with a very kind of black hat, white hat dichotomy, less complexity, and this kind of innate search for good in these other characters.
That part was fine. I like that part, but I'm just saying that Michael Keaton playing Vulture in the first Tom Holland movie, very diabolical, very good, dark energy, very twisty, very very psychological stuff going on with him. And the scene in the car when he figured out who Peter Parker was and the threat he made after his daughter went in and everything, like that was very good, deep, personal stuff. That good character stuff that was not portrayed in these characters. And the second one with what's his name, with Jake Gyllenhaal, right, playing Mysterio, very very deep motivations for why he hates Stark and why he's pissed, like the manipulation to get the goggles and everything. It was not just really simple comic book writing. It was pretty good, intriguing stuff, very good twisty stuff. The reveal of both of them as the villains were well done. When Michael Keaton opens the door, and when he twists and everything in the cafe after the first mission just dissolves and everything, like, whoa, you're like intrigued. This one, they're like, nah, here's Hobgoblin on the bridge, here's Doc Ock on the bridge, here's Electro on the power cords, and yeah, let's just throw him in jail and let's get on with the story. I'm like, that was lazy. It was just, that's why I was like let down. I was like, you guys did so good. Like, I was so intrigued by your story, your script before. Now it's just like, yeah, let's just get it out of the way.
Well,
I don't know.
It's pretty overstuffed, to be honest.
And the MCU's done that.
No villain.
well.
Yeah, but in this case, I don't think any villain was really well acquitted, except maybe Green Goblin. Do you think? Willem Dafoe acquitted
That
himself
twist
well?
was good, and he was very Green Goblin. The hood, his turn where he like you knew when his spider sense went off in the apartment, like something's happening. What's happening? And then all of a sudden, and they stopped. He what did he do? He shot Green Goblin. He got him ahead of time. That was awesome. You're like, okay, so what's really going on now? And then they unfold the rest of the story, and I really liked it. Except for all of a sudden, Sandman, who had been pro Let's Go Home the whole time, all of a sudden he's like, well, for the Statue of Liberty fight, I got to be a bad guy again, so I'm just going to be there fighting, even though I have no explanation of why suddenly I'm fighting. Because he was saying, let's go home because I care about my daughter. Because even in his movie, all he cared about was his daughter. That's all it was. I was like, what? Anyway. That's the lizard doesn't even have any dialogue. He talked like 3 times, and it's like, he was an intriguing, good character. Anyway, he wasn't like, wow, where's my arm? He was just like, I'm the lizard. And how come he stayed the lizard? In his movie, he could just stay as the lizard the whole time. It wore off. So anyway,
maybe he was in the middle of the going back. I don't know.
Whatever. It's called lazy writing. They just had to throw him in there. All right, let's go fast. The Phantom Zone fight. I don't remember what the name. What's the name of Doctor Strange's magical train through space and mountains, land, whatever that was.
Mirror universe, mirror reality, something like that.
Oh, dimension. My
mirror
dimension. Thanks, Silas.
Sounds right.
All right, so here we have a place where Doctor Strange has total control. Doctor Strange is the masked wizard who knows all these powers and everything. He's done everything he's done in all the other movies we've seen him. He's in complete control of his universe, including this little realm that is his. Peter Parker literally doesn't even know the name of it. Doctor Strange says this is the mirror dimension. And he instantly, through their cool little fight with the portals and the webs and everything, it was pretty awesome, but I've seen it a million times, whatever. But now, he sits there and does geometry just for a second and figures out how to pull the formation of the rocks together, and it outsmarts Doctor Strange. And suddenly, and again, he's never been here. He doesn't know what the rules are of this place, and he steals his little ring thing and all the gadgets and everything. and he leaves him there. He doesn't know how to use this magic. Or Peter may not ever be able to get back in here to save him. He may have just abandoned him forever. And it's not like he's just some guy. This is Doctor Strange, who was the key to everything that happened in Endgame. It's like, it was so stupid. Like, why would he be so reckless to do that when he was just like, I gotta do what's good for these bad guys, when this is all theoretical for his intentions with the bad guys. But he literally locks up Doctor Strange in the universe. He has no idea what the rules are, how to get him in or out, or if he can even open a door again, and just like banks. Why? Lazy writing. It made no sense for him to do that, or him to be able to pull the rocks together to outsmart Doctor Strange. It was dumb. I was like, everyone's just stunned by the visuals, but we've seen that ever since Inception. It's not new, and that was it. I was just like, this is stupid. It made no sense for him to do that. Did you enjoy that part the best, Josh? You like math beats science?
Yes.
No, math beats math, science beats magic.
I don't like either math or science. I'm gonna do it. So I didn't have to do either of those. I just had to read a bunch of cases. So yeah. No,
I didn't like that. It was dumb. My number 3. And Steve, I kind of mentioned this to you. The entire movie was non-consequential. The entire movie, like, it created its own issue and wrapped it all up, but the entire movie could have been avoided. That's the thing. If these guys never went back, they just wouldn't have gone back and died when they would have died anyway. The villains being pulled out of their movies would have fulfilled their not following through with their villainous plans in their movies. And so, like, him trying to make him turn good, none of them actually turned good. The ones that did turn good were already good in their movies, like Sandman and Doc Ock. They were reformed before they died or whatever. And what's his name? Sandman, he was like good, and he just parted off at the end of his film anyway. The only characters that would have been interesting to have like a turn would have been like Green Goblin. But Green Goblin he got beat up. That's it. That's all that happened in Green Goblin. He got beat up. And he stabbed Toby. And we had that moment, but like there was no like big like, oh my gosh, like that was like the last straw. Like Mysterio revealing Peter Parker's identity, that was like a very brilliant move for him to do that, to get vengeance after death.
So Tim, I mean, like, it doesn't change the status quo of the villains necessarily. No. It certainly does change Spider-Man's status quo.
Did it?
I mean, for one, May is dead. Okay. And not only dead, but dead as a chain of causation that he started. Right. Like, think about it in the most cynical of terms, and I got to credit a podcast that I listened to called The Weekly Planets for coming up with this. But essentially, Peter wanted to get his friends into MIT so badly. Like, the thought of going to a community college was so abhorrent to him, that if he had gone to damn community college, May would still be alive. Right. Like, those are the scales of this film. And so, what a consequence to have to live with. I mean, Uncle Ben getting shot in the street is a terrible consequence to live with, but like having caused a rip in the fabric of reality, out of which a villain comes to murder your aunt, like, this is all by your hand,
Yeah, and that's
horrifying thing to live with. And also now no one knows who he is.
Tim's like, yeah, I mean, you raise a good point, but I have to be.
No, it is a good point. I was gonna say that's
I can see what you're talking about, but it's really hurting my counter-revolution persona that I have here.
Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. He lost his aunt and uncle. Parents were never really in the story, and then MJ was just constantly kidnapped. That was their movie formula. It was just MJ was kidnapped and he saved MJ. No real tragedy other than Aunt May almost getting killed by Green Goblin in the first movie, and I never felt like she was threatened by Ock in the second movie. The second movie, or Andrew Garfield, you have the huge.
It was a pretty high building, Tim.
Oh,
I mean, she was free falling at one point. Didn't she hang on with her umbrella?
stuck on the guardrail. Yeah. That was their first encounter. I knew the stakes weren't that high in their first fight. But, well, I guess that was their second one if you can count when he lost control of the solar thing and Spider-Man had to jump in. But anyway, Andrew Garfield, huge stakes and huge loss where he had his parents, then Uncle Ben, and then Gwen. Like, huge deal. And into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales with his uncle and everything. That was a crazy huge twist and everything. Very well done, very emotional. Then you have this one where we have his parents were out of the picture, and Ben's death we never saw, like you mentioned, Steve. All of his origin stuff was all off camera and just pre-established, which is fine for what they were doing with him. But he never had any real stakes for his personal relationships other than will Zendaya go out with me or not. It's Tony. Okay, I can't say that because Tony was a huge deal for him. That was a big loss, and that was a very powerful moment for him in those other movies. So this just being added, and now we lost Aunt May. I don't know if that's necessarily. I mean, yeah, he's just running. He doesn't have anyone now. He doesn't have anyone.
Well, yeah, and his Aunt May was Marissa Tomei. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's tragic. I agree with that.
Tragic that she's no longer going to be in these.
A lot
movies.
more tragic than was it Diane Keaton was in the. Wasn't that
the Amazing Spider-Man? Yeah. But
anyway,
whoever they got for the Raimi Spider-Man movies, she was phenomenal. Just the perfect old biddy. But yeah, like you say,
just
no
Doc with an umbrella.
No Marissa Tomei.
I'll give you that. There's one thing that was accomplished in this story was the death of Aunt May. But the very next thing, my number one was that Toby should have died. If we're talking about the growth of Peter Parker and that big turn, and one of my favorite things was everything with the Peter Parkers was brilliant and it was really well written, and I like the idea that they established that Andrew Garfield had a much darker career as Spider-Man, where that's all he focused on was Spider-Man, to the point where he talks about he stopped pulling his punches because that makes sense. After losing Gwen, he's like, I'm not going to get attached to anyone, and I'm just going to like follow through with my job because that's what I'm going to be Spider-Man. That's it. Tobey Maguire got sick of watching MJ get into trouble and his aunt get into trouble, so he's like, hey, I'm just going to be a people person. I'm just going to do my job and keep the clothes, my uniform underneath. But I'm just going to do my thing, live my life, and just try and serve and be a good boy, But he had that restraint that Andrew Garfield confessed that he kind of cut loose a little bit. Now you have Tom Holland at the very beginning of his career, even though he's had some huge adventures already with universal, colossal characters he's fought with. But he's not learned that lesson when things get really personal. So when Andrew Garfield made that line that I had to stop pulling my punches, you don't want to do that, and then when he started pummeling Green Goblin, which was the arc of Green Goblin to be pummeled, when Toby jumped in there and stopped the hang glider stab, and I was like, oh, that was cool. And he's like this is how important this message is. And then he gets stabbed in the back by Hobgoblin, and I gotta say, of all the Spider-Man fights, my favorite one-on-one fist fight was the end fight in the very first Spider-Man movie with with Spider-Man and Green Goblin. I think that was just so cool. He pulling the bricks and everything. That was so awesome to see. His little tricks. But here, if Toby had died by that same Green Goblin, which was the first ending he tried to do, is to skewer him with the glider. That he was going to be a martyr to die to teach that lesson to Peter Parker, that this is how important it is that you pull your punches, that I stopped it and then I died to teach you that. And then Green Goblin goes to jail.
I'm pretty sure if we look at the draft process for this film, I'm pretty sure earlier on that was a plot point, that Toby would get stabbed and succumb to his wound.
I would have cried.
But they brush it aside, saying, "Oh, I've been stabbed a lot."
Because we have to hug. We have to get that.
I sincerely believe that the money, the House of Mouse deemed this as a very viable new avenue for the Spider-Man IP to be making spin-off flicks. Because what was the big upshot of this film? I went back and I watched Raimi stuff. I watched the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which I never thought I'd watch again. But all of a sudden, I'm like, that Andrew Garfield guy, he is so bloody charismatic. I will endure films that I find slightly less enjoyable because I want to see his chemistry with Gwen. I want to see just the way he played Spider-Man. I want to enjoy some more time with these guys who we got just a little taste of in this film. Though I do have one criticism that I want to get on record. I've been known to tread the boards a little bit myself. I know maybe a thing or two about, line deliveries. And I felt very distinctly like for a lot of the dialogue, maybe even as much as 80% of it, the actors playing Spider-Man, were not in the same room together at the same time. Maybe this had a lot to do with cast availabilities. Maybe this had to do with the level of secrecy that this film required around it. That at no one point could more than one Spider-Man actor be on the Disney lot, because you've got people with cameras waiting outside there all day, every day. People would talk. There would be confirmations all over the internet. And they did, of course. But you want to keep the rumor mill as quiet as possible for as long as possible. So there are moments when they're all huddling up, and there are moments where they do kind of group shots. But a lot of it is one shots. Like, I'm Andrew Garfield and I'm delivering a line. Cut to Tobey Maguire and I'm delivering a line. Cut to Tom Holland and I react to these two guys talking. Stuff like that. And of course, when you've got masks on, you can get away with absolutely everything. They can huddle, they can click each other's backs, whatever.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I was thinking another thing about that possibility was, COVID precautions as well. I mean, they try and limit how many people are in a studio at a time. I agree. And whatever, it was fine. It was fun. Like when the Peters finally showed up, I didn't know for sure if Toby was in. I knew the rumors. Which was cool for me. The second that the portal opened up when they were summoning the Peters, like, oh, they're going to call the other Peters now. That's what's going to happen. And you saw Andrew Garfield. I was like, it's just him jumping in the alley. I was like, that's Andrew Garfield. Because contrary to what you just said, Steve, when we did our top 7 Spider-Man lists, I did it with a friend of mine who owns a comic book shop here in Salt Lake. My number one, and I watched them all right before I did this list. My number one was The Amazing Spider-Man. That's my favorite Spider-Man movie. It's the funnest movie, I think, because it's got good, fun characters, good relationships. Andrew Garfield is, like you said, charismatic as crap. And that's what makes me really mad is all of a sudden everyone's like, where's our new Andrew Garfield movie? We love Andrew Garfield. No one has said a word about Andrew Garfield since his second crappy movie came out. I've always been praising Andrew Garfield. It was like, oh, Toby. Andrew Garfield so much better. Anyway, whatever. His movies Tobey Maguire's had a place. And if he had died to tell that lesson, it would have been a very emotional, good, heartwarming, because I don't think they're gonna make more Toby movies. Andrew Garfield, looks great.
You think Tim? I don't know.
I mean, they could, but I don't think he really has the interest. He's older, whatever. And who knows? That's all speculation.
Yeah, but you know Garfield, what though? They throw that Disney money at him, and then he's like, "Oh man, I'll put those tights on one more time."
I don't
You don't think there's enough money in that Disney vault to get him to come out and do that?
It's not that. If they got Harrison Ford to come back and play Han Solo, anything is possible with Disney money. I'll say that.
That's what I'm saying, though, is that, you're right. I mean, Disney has been very, very good about bringing franchises to life, to yield massive amounts of merchandise. And if now that they see that there is clearly an appetite for these other Spider-Mans, you better believe they're going to be going back to that well as many times as they can. I mean, you think there's a lot of Star Wars movies, these Marvel movies that they've got now that they've got this Spider-Man franchise. I think it's just going to start getting really complicated,
which is why they're just why they can't let go of like Black Widow. After her very fulfilling death, she finally gets her own movie, and they're talking about bringing back, paying enough money to get Iron Man back.
That's what I mean. And this is okay. So this is the concern. This is generally okay, and I've been talking about this since Endgame. Okay, the thing that I have been so concerned about was there were 2 moments in Endgame that were so gut wrenching and it was the death of Black Widow and the death of Iron Man, right? And like the death of Iron, I mean, I have never seen so many grown men bawling their eyes out as the perfect hero's death that was Iron Man's death in Endgame. Agreed. And if they are going to do this multiverse stuff, they can bring back anybody at any point, right? And like, and so now it's, you know, like you hear this, right? They're talking about throwing money at Robert Downey Jr. to come back and do Iron Man. Well, that just cheapens that death big time. If they bring him back, it just cheapens what happened. No death is final. They can just kill anybody and bring them back anytime they want. Right. And it's just, when you do that, it makes that moment it'll make that moment not as big for me if they bring. It's
part of the reason I've never watched Black Widow. I just can't build up the interest to sit and watch. I'm like, I've got everything I need out of this character because her death was so fulfilling. If Tobey Maguire had died right there with the glider, I'd have been like, that was so beautiful. Because in his movies,
they had to have written it. They had to have written it for him to die, and then someone at Disney's like, "Whoa, you know how much money we could make with Tobey Maguire coming back more?" No. Don't
Bob Iger is like, hang on, rewrite.
You rewrite that to be something funny. Because like,
and Tobey could have died doing the thing he's most famous for, and that's crying in his Spider-Man suit. That would have been his final moment to tear up.
But seriously, like, that was something that, like, when he stabbed him in the back, I got the same feeling that I got when Kylo Ren stabbed Han Solo. Like, oh my gosh, he's dead. And then he didn't die. He just joked about it. He's like, oh, I've been stabbed before.
I've been stabbed.
And I was like, what?
So we just learned that Hobgoblin is not very dangerous when it comes down to it. If he had jumped over the glider in the first movie, it would have been fine.
We've learned surprise. Correct. Go ahead.
Think about how full circle that would be if the first Spider-Man villain is the one that kills him. You know? Like,
that's what I'm saying. And that was his move, was to stab him in the back with his glider. He jumped over and fought back, and he caused his own death when he crushed the rocks on top of him. What were you going to say, Steve?
Look, if nothing else, it just demonstrates to us all that Disney can be, surprise, pretty toothless at times. You know, they also didn't really do anything dramatic with those personas. Like, they didn't seem to have. They had been kind of frozen in suspended animation. Up till the moment we see them again. They hadn't kind of really materially changed. I kind of half expected Tobey to be like, I don't wear the suit anymore. Like, I'm just a guy in khaki. But I've got the organic webbing still, so here we go. Let's have an adventure.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny too.
But they didn't do anything like that. There was no, like, nobody had a cybernetic arm, or, you know, just like nobody was an amputee or had kids. Well, maybe they had. But look, there was no definitive progression to any of those guys. So just like not killing Tobey, not writing their backstories also didn't happen.
Opens up.
Mm-hmm. I guess there was a sense or danger that if we do anything interesting or otherwise attention grabbing with these characters, we're going to have to commit to showing it in a film sometime. So they were very vanilla.
Yeah.
Very as they were, very kind of trapped in amber.
Yeah.
Stupid big Disney corporation. Stupid Disney corporation wanting to make money. What's wrong with them?
It could have been heavier, I think, with more stakes, because the first two were very effective emotionally for me because the way they were written, because they jumped in with both feet into all of those arcs, and the MCU has done that the entire way, including not many, but effective deaths that were very satisfying, that were painful to watch. Tobey's death in this would have been very tastefully done. It would have given meaning for Tom Holland and a full closure for his own character, and it would have made the stakes made it more scary for who Green Goblin was, because he didn't die at the end. Like, it just, I don't remember what they did with him, but like, if he came back and he could play do the Green Goblin, he could come back whenever they want. He was a huge seller. I loved what they did with Green Goblin in this one, but like Willem Dafoe's performance, that would just make him even scarier now because he's legit. He's crazy, and he's not going to hold back no matter what. Everyone else always kind of felt like they kind of held back a little bit, but I don't know. There was a lot of great dialogue, great scenes. I mean, I don't want to sit there and like crap all over. There was just some things that bugged me, and my whole point of my list wasn't that this movie sucks. My point of the list was like, this movie is not as perfect as everyone is acting like it is. And like I said, everyone just has nostalgia goggles. They just like, oh, Toby, whatever he says, it's gonna make me just fawn over it. It's so exciting to see him again. Doc Ock, he sounded just like he did in his movie when he said, "Hello, Peter." And it's like, okay, that's not enough. He's not the same character. You have to write him the same if you want me to believe that this is him. As far as I'm concerned, there were so many universes, multiverse planets or whatever, that these are characters similar to the ones we saw in the movies, but they weren't the actual ones from those movies because they did not act or feel the same. It was just, like you said, they literally in the story had to tuck them away till they were ready to do something with them later. And it was just whatever. They've done it better in a lot of other movies in the MCU with juggling many characters and giving them their moment in the sun and making them really well written and true to character with those interactions. The Peter Parker stuff, out of the park. Everything. I loved it. Cheap filming, however they did it, aside, it was really good. But all the stuff with the villains was terrible. I'm sorry, not terrible. Just it was lazy. It was really lazy.
What's your read then on Doctor Strange?
The character in this movie?
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I mean, I'm not that. I watched his first movie. I was at your house, Josh, the first time I saw it, and I was like, I wasn't impressed with the character stuff because character-wise, they didn't do a great job with him. I felt like this character was true to how he's been doing his little cameos in the other movies he's been in. But
really? Okay, so a teenager comes to you with a problem. Do you immediately put down your drink and go, I know what, let's change all of reality?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Isn't this something where like just a stern talking to
my friends are not going to go to the college they want to. My life is over. I'm trying to figure out what was the deal with the snow. Like, it's freaking Doctor Strange. They had a blizzard in their living. He can't create a portal underneath the floor to just suck down all the snow and dump it in the Himalayas. Or they're sitting there physically shoveling it into like a garbage, and they're just going to take that and dump it where? I was like, this is Doctor Strange. He can make all that stuff go away instantly. To teach them a lesson, or just because it looked funny having him walking around in his moon boots or whatever it was. I don't know. You're right, though.
I wish the film offered a better explanation as to why Doctor Strange was acting so flippant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was he
and disoriented? It's like he didn't know for sure what was going on when the spells were.
And I must admit, this stood out to me in the trailer as early on as that. Like seeing the scene play out with him attempting the spell and getting derailed by Peter interjecting. Like, it didn't seem like something that the Sorcerer Supreme or the previous Sorcerer Supreme, because he's lost the title to Wong at this point. Anyways, I suppose it's a function of the snap, but he was played very, very strangely. I suppose it's in the name. But it was not consistent to what I had expected from Doctor Strange.
He didn't feel omniscient, that's for sure.
He didn't feel like a guy who had all these tools at his disposal. He didn't have to go for the massive hammer. He could have gone with something a little bit more finessed. Yeah. For instance, it seems like the only person giving Peter Parker bad press is J. Jonah Jameson. Why not just... cost a handy little spell on that guy.
Yeah. Create some kind of an alias that cleared his name.
Well, and also, why didn't they just... So, if he could change the spell 6 times...
while casting it.
Why not just start the spell with the people? Like, okay, who do you want to still know that you're Spider-Man? Obviously, I want to still know, right? And
right.
You know what I mean? Like, why didn't he just start with the spell? We're like, okay, so me, Happy, Aunt May, MJ, Ned, you know, anybody else you want, I can start the spell from there instead of switching it 6 or 7 times, creating this space-time continuum crunch that all of these supervillains are going to now come into this world. And you're right, like the big thing was they kind of make fun of it right at the end where he's like, wait a minute, you didn't even call and ask before you came and asked for an reality. and in my mind though, I'm sitting there and I was like, yeah, that tracks with my experience with kids. You know, like,
but Doctor Strange is not a kid.
I know, but I'm just saying, like,
Peter. My biggest issue, and I suppose this comes back to like just the old adage that do the means justify the end? So they wanted to do this multiversal type of story, and Doctor Strange was their man, their in. Do you build in an additional reason for why he would like have this touch of madness, you know, to even go down this enterprise,
right?
Or do you just cut to the chase? And they did the latter. They just okay, let's throw out the reason as to why Doctor Strange would agree to do this in the first place, and just have him do it. Have him be the heel of that first act. He's the, you know, he becomes the opponent to beat.
I was going to say, it had nothing to do with the FBI investigation. It was all about, I didn't get into the college I wanted to. And can you explain why he needed a GED prep book? It's freaking Peter Parker, who just foiled the science gods by doing geometry.
You're talking about at the end?
Yeah, I was like, why does he have a
why
book?
He needs the book in the first place? Why he can't just pass it without even
it's Peter Parker. He can ace that.
Because otherwise, how is the audience supposed to know that he's going to
again, cheap gags, just whatever. Wasn't
That's
clever.
not a gag. That's not funny.
Not
he's
clever.
Smart and he's getting a GED. That's ridiculous.
Anyways, I'm gonna come back to the same point. It's a big dumb movie, and like so many comic books that perhaps hail from the more golden or Marvel era of comic books, where the why wasn't that important. Oh no, sorry, the what wasn't that important. The why was the important. You know, like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby, all those guys would just kind of hand wave the hard, you know, reasoning, because they were marketing these books to kids. They're not meant to hold up adult scrutiny. And as we have unfortunately been spoiled by very, very well thought through, very good superhero movies. And I'm looking at typically the Russos brothers, were they? Yeah, those guys. Winter Soldier, Civil War. Yeah. These are films that absolutely track every character's motivation is true to them, and they're acting very, very logically, and within the parameters of who they are. This movie throws that out. For the sake of the big thrills. Was it successful?
So
discuss.
They made the
Tim,
money.
I gotta tell you, I gotta get going. But
well, we'll wrap.
Oh, are you rapping? I thought you still had, like,
I got through my list.
Oh, you got through it? You didn't even do it. Like, I thought you were still on like number 4 or 3.
No,
he jumped around.
Phantom Zone, the entire.
Oh, well, edit out what I just said then. I thought you still had a half a list left.
Oh, I can go to the notes.
No, let's not do that. You know, because no, let's not do that. Look, here's the thing, right? Like, there's not, other than The Princess Bride, there is not a perfect movie.
Don't say perfect. Oh.
There's not. There's not. Now listen, here's the thing, right? Like,
I think Endgame's perfect.
No, there's problems.
I don't think so.
But still, like, but the thing is that, what do you expect? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
if they're gonna say this is the greatest MCU movie of all time, I expect it to be as good as the other.
I have never heard that, but but I have heard. But I've heard a lot of people saying it's a great movie, and it is, because I walked in expecting there's going to be big reveals. There was big reveals. I was expecting Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. They showed up, right? I got to see all of these. I got to see all these old characters. But also, to be fair, I want to make it very clear, though. I am coming from a place of not being super in into the detail minutia of these things. I didn't watch all the TV shows, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't, you know, I'm just a guy coming in wanting to be entertained, and I was super entertained. Like, you know, and
it's a fun movie.
So, yeah. So I mean, yeah.
It's fine. Like I said, I wasn't saying the movie sucked. I was saying it was not as great as everyone's acting like it is. And I'll say this, it's not as good as The Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay, now you're just getting
crucify me.
Now you're just
whoa.
Really
this
not.
This is why we don't have any followers.
For Tom Holland, Far From Home is still his best movie. It's so much better written. It's got just as great action, great twists. It's amazing.
I did want to throw this out there though. I think they did a very good job in pulling out the emotions of Aunt May dying.
Yeah.
And I think that they did a very, well, you mentioned that you didn't think the movie was very emotional. You didn't feel anything. But I really felt that. And the other thing is, the other thing also I felt was, I felt the emotion of him realizing that his girlfriend and his best friend are not going to know who he is anymore.
That was fine. But then they were like weird about it.
Fine? I don't know. Maybe I'm in a different emotional place.
You know what did it better? I was just as touched, and I hate referencing a Harry Potter movie, but like when they did that in Harry Potter, when they waved their little wands and their families forgot about them, they disappeared from their pictures and all that stuff in the last movie. That was just a couple minutes of that was pretty touching. But like this, I was like, okay, he can still go hit on. Like, what's to stop Peter Parker from introducing himself to Zendaya, asking her out, and he already knows her? She's still wearing the necklace, which was adorable, you know. But like that sucks because their relationship in the last movie that was the heart of the movie for me. Aunt May's death and Tom Holland crying on the rooftops and everything, beautifully done. Except for when he says, "I know where he's gonna be, somewhere personal," and he appears on the rooftop. What rooftop was it? When they're like, "Where's Tom Holland?" and he's like, and it's like, "Oh, we know where he is," and then they just show up on the rooftop. I don't know where he was.
Wasn't that where they had that little three-way cuddle?
I don't know.
Well,
with Ned,
I was on top of the school.
Well, I
Ned,
think
MJ, and Peter.
Well, I do think look, Peter does go to try to hit on MJ.
And he doesn't.
But he doesn't. And that's the thing, right? There's always been, this is one thing I did like about the Tobey Maguire ones, was that the Tobey Maguire movies always had this dichotomy of the conflict he had between being a superhero and being a normal person. And because he had the great responsibility that came with his power, he ultimately chose to keep MJ out of his life. And that, from what I understand, not being a comic book reader per se for Spider-Man, that was a lot of Spider-Man's inner conflict, was being in love with MJ and having to keep her away because of fear that she was going to continually be kidnapped and attacked and all of these things. And so I was really happy to see that they portrayed some of that in the Tom Holland character, that there was this inner conflict there with being in love with MJ. And I thought it was so well done, the way he was looking when he was seeing how happy she was that she was making it into MIT, you know, and all these things. And he saw, and I love the Band-Aid, seeing the Band-Aid over the scar, and
did
being
that
like,
appear, by the way, mid-scene? I swore the beginning of that scene she didn't have it, and then suddenly it was there. Am I
think
crazy?
it was there the whole time. I think you are, but the other thing is that,
no surprise there.
No, but I think that whole thing where she was like, yeah, it doesn't hurt anymore. You know, when he's like, oh, where'd you get that? And she's like, well, it doesn't hurt anymore. That was kind of like a, you know, like, you know, he just, if I have to, it was like that inner conflict of, if I bring her back into this, it's just going to hurt her more, you know?
Yeah, or it could happen again.
So I was really happy to see that they had kind of introduced that into the story. So
right, but the sweetest moment in the Zendaya Tom Holland thing was when he said they wanted to go on their little date after hours, and they're like, "I'll meet you outside in 10 minutes," and she's like, "Meet me out there in 5." And then they go on their little moment, and then it gets interrupted by the discovery of the cameras. As far as the stakes, again, you know what was better was when Andrew Garfield had to promise Dennis Leary that I won't pursue your daughter. I'll leave her out of it because I don't want her to get hurt. And then the next movie, she dies, and he's having visions seeing Dennis Leary. Like, it was painful. It was horrible. And that death of Gwen is like, oh. And everyone, I liked the scene where he saves Zendaya, and it gave him that little closure for that. That was kind of cool. I didn't get all punchy, even though I love Zendaya and I love Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, so like that should have really clicked it for me. But I was like, oh, that was cute. Felt a little shoehorned. I didn't understand they're throwing the little syringes around and playing catch with it. Like, it seemed that was a little unnecessary. It's freaking Spider-Man. Just each one of them hold it. They're in a grapple with the guys. Just that's it. It's like not whatever. Anyway, it was fun. It did have some emotions. I did enjoy it, but it didn't have the weight like I was saying, except for a couple minutes when she died. That was it. And then Happy shows up, and then Tom Holland shows up at her tombstone, and then Happy appears right next to him randomly. And to get a tombstone in place would have been months later. So they just happened to be there on the same day. I'm like, whatever. I'm just saying.
So, do you think that public opinion will cool on this fairly quickly? Do you think those same people who say this is the greatest MCU movie ever, it's all hype? It's all just infatuation with seeing your old Spider-Man again?
Yeah, it's all it is.
Once that fades, it'll be gone forever, and this will kind of shuffle its way into the middle of the good camp.
If they do another Andrew Garfield movie, I think that'll be everyone's favorite for a while. If they do another, and they assign Tom Holland for 3 more movies, if they did another Tobey or brought them back for another Tom Holland movie, that will be exciting. It's just like the first Spider-Man movie, everyone's like, oh, that was really cool to see for the first time. But by the time they got to the Spider-Man 2, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know a comic book movie could be this good. And a lot of people still put that one high up in the ranks all these years later. I think it'll be like that. Now that they kind of scraped the surface, got everyone's feel-goods going, their juices flowing, now they're going to be like, oh, now let's actually write a decent movie with these 3 characters. Because again, I loved everything with even the cheesy jokes. I never fought an alien. I want to fight an alien, like that kind of stuff. That was really good. It was cute. I loved watching them interact. I thought it was really good writing, and they felt in character.
Like, I was part of the Avengers. Wow.
Stuff like that. It was so good. I would rewatch everything from that second half over and over and over. I don't know if I ever need to watch the first half of that movie again, because it doesn't do anything. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, well, wrapping up again. Go see if you sat through this and you haven't seen the movie. I don't know where you were, because $1 billion went into it. Divide that by what, $13 the average American ticket now. So that many people went and saw it. I'm not doing the math.
People went and saw it and got COVID. Zing!
Steve, was your theaters full down there in Australia?
Oh yeah, and I'm told that Australians don't typically respond vocally in theaters.
Really?
But
was there cheering?
I know, it's news to me. There was. So in spite of being a rather dour crowd typically, Australia came to the party.
That's interesting. Now in Cape Town and South Africa, is that a lot more lively crowd that you would expect?
Oh yes.
Really?
Oh yes. No, definitely. I remember when the Tumblr emerged from the Bat Pod emerged from the wrecked Tumblr in Park Night.
Yeah.
The whole crowd erupted in what is a very Cape Townian way of saying yeah, which is yo.
Nice. That's a weird moment to cheer for. The biggest moment.
It was so explosive. It was like, because you don't expect it. It's like, this thing is dead. That's it. The chase is over. But no.
We saw that in Batman Returns when the Bat missile torpedo shoots out of the original Batmobile. I don't know. Anyway,
look, for some reason that moment, maybe it's because of all the bloody gearheads in Cape Town.
I thought it jumping in front of the rocket launcher causing that so whoa, that was so cool. Anyway, the moment in the movie that everyone cheered. Yeah.
So good.
The moment everyone cheered in this one was when Tobey came in. Everyone was like in shock when Andrew pulled his cowl off, and I knew it was him from his silhouette. I was like, that's Andrew Garfield. That's awesome. But as soon as Tobey Maguire stepped in, everyone, whoa!
What, there wasn't a titter for the brick catch?
There was.
Yeah.
I guess there was more like, but I thought that was shoehorned. But anyway, Josh, you had a live audience too. Sounds like.
When I saw that moment, I thought, oh, maybe the trailers were a huge misdirect. Maybe we're gonna get a Spider-Man has a new father figure,
Or
Daredevil team up. Like maybe that's what this movie's about.
Did you watch Did you watch that series, Steve?
Oh yes.
I only watched the first couple or a few episodes. I loved it. It was really good, but I couldn't finish it. But I'm excited. I hope they bring it in. And Venom's the little seed they planted for Venom, very well done. Very well done. And that movie sucked, Venom 2. I liked the first Venom, but Venom 2 was terrible. But then how they worked that retroactively, beautifully done. That was the most clever thing out of this entire movie was the planting of the seed and him going back to his movie, because Venom, Tom Hardy's Venom does not work fighting Venom as a bad guy. It doesn't work because he's the anti-hero, or he's a hero in his universe. To have him fighting Spider-Man and MCU doesn't work. By having him come, Venom reacting, oh, I hate that guy in his movie, and then planting the symbiote and then going back, perfect. That's all I need. Now the symbiote can be a bad guy Venom. I'm excited for that. So anyway, Steve, thanks for taking time to hang out with us. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. At 2 a.m. I'm still functioning. Josh, thanks for sacrificing a little sleep. You have to go to the gym in like 4 hours, I'm sure.
3.
3 hours.
Ouch.
Yeah,
He's
that's
committed.
fine. It's part of the day. So,
Part of the day. So, yeah, just grind it out on Saints on Cinema, right?
that's right. Keep grinding.
Anyway, yeah, thanks Steve, thanks Josh for joining, and thanks for anyone for watching this all the way through. Let us know what you thought of the movie. Am I up in the night, or was this really the greatest MCU movie of all time and the greatest Spider-Man movie of all time? Or did you guys have time to process and realize it's not that great, it's just fun? That's my final statement. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks again, Steve and Josh, and we'll catch you next time on Saints on Cinema. See ya.
Tim's wrong.